My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be the poetic novel Video 1, Una Ellis Fermor. This is the book that I'm going to read from. Here it is, okay. The Poetic Novel 1, Influences and Elements by John Passfield. Why the three roses? Well, it was Gertrude Stein who uttered one of the most famous comments about imagery. A rose is a rose is a rose. Well, what she meant by that, maybe you could write a whole book if you thought about it long enough. So I put three roses on the cover. So I'm going to read from that book. Aside from this manuscript, though, it's not a printed book and is not for sale on the internet or in a bookstore. It is available for free access on my website, which is johnpassfield.ca. Just click the cover icon and the book will be yours to read. It has 15 chapters and it has 75,000 words. Its subtitle is Elements and Influences, and each chapter explores the origins of the form and techniques for the poetic novel that I have developed over a writing career of about 25 years and over 30 novels and novellas. The first chapter of this book deals with another book, and here it is, The Frontiers of Drama by Una Ellis Fermor. Now, she is the author, Una Ellis Fermor. The picture is of Richard Burton. I think there's a note inside, but I haven't looked for a while. I'm assuming he's young Prince Hal, who puts on his dad's crown in the second half of Henry IV, Part 2 of Shakespeare's play. Okay, so The Frontiers of Drama by Una Ellis Fermor. This is the book that I write about in Chapter 1 of my book, The Poetic Novel, Part 1. Okay, and I'll explain all about that as I go on. Now, I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but in order to give you the flavor of this chapter and of my whole book, I'll read a few pages, and then I'll read the Una Ellis Fermor quotations that have been so stimulating to me in my development of a form for the poetic novel. So in each chapter, I wrote about a book that really influenced me, gave me a core idea that I could work with for the next, 50 years, really. Okay, note 1, Una Ellis Fermor. I first read The Frontiers of Drama by Una Ellis Fermor in June 1969 when I was 24 years old. Now, I'm 77 now. You can do math on that one. It's 50-something years, I guess. 24 years old. Her book was a revelation to me, as I'd been reading critics who were content to discuss each writer's work, from within the parameters of the play or novel itself, often relating the technical achievements of the particular book to its meaning, but never giving me a sense that one could discuss a novel or a play as an example of an art form, which has a shape, which is an idea form, or a sense that the chosen idea form is a vehicle which determines within certain parameters what kind of thought can be conveyed by the shape and scope of its conventions, or that certain writers write comfortably within those conventions, while the greatest writers stretch those conventions in order to be able to squeeze more thought capacity and communications capacity out of those art forms, redesigning them, those art forms, in the process, and leaving them with more thought capacity, more meaning capacity than was heretofore thought to be possible. So good writers write comfortably within an existing art form. Great writers change the art form to make it work better, to make it have more meaning capacity. Okay, 2, a quote from Una Ellis Fermor's book. There is an individuality inherent in any art form that broadly determines its nature. So every art form has an individuality, a nature. It's a certain kind of thing. Okay, here's my comment. Such an idea was fascinating to me. Until I read this, it never occurred to me that the various art forms had their advantages and their limits as forms of expression. Before this time, I had come to a realization that certain writers were suited to certain art forms, and that some writers were burdened by writing in a form to which he or she was not particularly suited. My reading of Elizabethan Jacobean poetic dramatists other than Shakespeare led me to realize that not all such writers were born to write drama. They had been led to do so by the fact that the poetic drama was the new, exciting, and dominant literary form of the age. It turned out that some could write excellent poetry, but not dramatic poetry. That others could write a good poetic scene, but only one or two per play, the rest being filler. That some could write poetic dialogue, but could not create living characters, and so on. So they could do something within that form well, but not everything the way Shakespeare did it. Ellis Fermor added to my understanding that there's an ideal art form for every artist by explaining that the art form itself is a medium of communication and that it has its advantages and its limitations. I had considered that Shakespeare, of all Elizabethan Jacobean dramatists, was most ideally suited to that medium, but had never considered that the medium itself determined in large measure what could be communicated from human to human, that the poetic drama both liberated and limited any writer who chose to write in that medium of communication, that not everything could be conveyed in that art form, that each art form had been developed in order to be able to present some aspect of human thought to its desired audience, and that the ideal matchup between artist and art form isn't just a case of talent, but of essential thought. A writer whose conception of the nature of life is dramatically concentrated will be wise to choose to write in a dramatic medium, while a writer who sees life as spaciously epic will be wise to choose to write in an epic form. So, choose the art form that matches your view of life. What form, then, is appropriate for a writer who wants to write about life as both dramatic and epic, as did Shakespeare? So you choose an art form. It gives you one of the things you want to write about, but how do you get the other one in? The art form might not want you to do so. Okay, here's the third section, a quote from Ellis Fermor. The natural conflict between content and form is to certain dramatists no deterrent, but a challenge. So if you want to pour your content into a form and it's not fitting, it could be a deterrent, and you walk away and say, well, I tried writing novels or I tried writing plays, but I quit. It didn't work. Or it might be a challenge. Hey, I poured the milk into the glass, the milk overflowed. I invented a new form, a new glass, I suppose you could say. So some find it a challenge. Hey, I can work with this form. I can make it a better form. It was a revelation to me to realize that the matchup for a writer and an art form is so crucial and so organic. This led me to understand, as conveyed by Ellis Fermor, that some writers in a certain art form find that they can express themselves quite comfortably within the existing conventions of that art form. They express themselves completely within the form in which they are working and never experience any dissatisfaction with the existing conventions by which they convey their sense of life, as it is lived, understood, and explored to their audience. However, the artist who interests Ellis Fermor is the writer for whom the chosen art form reveals its limitations, right? What I want to pour my life experience into is too small a vessel. It had never occurred to me that such writers as Shakespeare were working at the outer limits of the art form in which they were writing. In our time, the cliche push the envelope is quite common, but I'm sure that it does not apply to 99% of the writers who work within what they take to be a very congenial art form, one which serves quite well to convey whatever it is about the lives that we're living that they wish to convey to their readers. So if your understanding of life is small, maybe a little shot glass is plenty. You pour your life experience into that and it fits fine. But what if you're Shakespeare, who had a sense that life was pretty large and pretty complex? What to do? Those who consume art, publishers, editors, and readers of literature, influence artists to distort their own life experiences to suit the requirements of an existing and serviceable art form. And some artists resist this subtle pressure, and some do not. Either the art form will shrink the artist, or the artist will expand the art form. Well, I go on in my thoughts about what Ellis Fermor has to say. But I think that's enough to give you the flavor, both of my book and of Ellis Fermor's book. So from now on, I'll just read the quotations from her book that I selected that so stimulated my thoughts, even though in each case I wrote a response to quotation of anywhere from 1 to 10 paragraphs. So sometimes I wrote 1 paragraph, sometimes I wrote a whole page. But here are the quotations from her book that I selected and to which I respond in this essay. Certainly neither the Agamemnon and its companion plays, nor Antony and Cleopatra of the individual history plays, lack dramatic concentration or intensity, each in accordance with its nature, and yet all have in common the power to impress upon us the magnitude of the issues, the multiplicity of the lives and events involved. So many plays give us a very tight 3 or 4 person dramatic episode. And many plays give us the epic sweep of a whole society or all of life from the caveman till now. But some, the Agamemnon and Shakespeare's history plays, give us both. How do you do that? Number 5, major drama has never been continuously naturalistic in form and content throughout the whole length of a play. So people should seem real, but should they seem real for the whole of a play or a novel? Well, I write about that, but I won't read it here. Number 6, of the ways of deepening the imaginative significance of a play without increasing its length or bulk, imagery is at once the most simple and most powerful. So how do you write a great big fat book without writing 1,000 pages? Well, imagery. The fatness of the book will be in the ideas that it suggests, not in the number of words, not in the amount of ink and pages. 7, the functions of imagery which we have here considered among the most rapid and potent means of deepening the imaginative significance of a play and thereby helping to transcend the natural limitations of the form. So you can get more into your glass of milk, I guess, by certain techniques. Couldn't do it with a glass of milk, but you can do it with an art form, right? She discusses them and I discuss what she mentions. 8, Pirandello's interest is therefore primarily in the unspoken thought, which the characters are themselves unconscious, rather than the dramatist's problem of conveying to the audience that of which the characters and the author are conscious. So how do you write something? How do you write about something that's unconscious to the character? Like, how do you get that on the page when the character's not aware of it and not speaking it? Well, I discuss that as she discusses it. Number 9, Hamlet's soliloquies deepen our understanding by revealing the processes of the mind itself. So I came to realize that what I'm writing about isn't what a character's thinking, but how the character's thinking. And so that's all discussed there. Number 10, certain plays include not only a fuller expression of the unspoken conscious thought, but also some expression of the unformulated. Whoops, flipping a page here. There we are, of the unformulated subconscious thought. So how do you write about thoughts that aren't even thoughts yet? Oh, what a challenge. But if you want to write about how we think, like we create thought. How do you write about not thought, but the creation of thought, pre-thought, if you like? All these are technical challenges. Okay, here's one that I repeated, and I'm going to read my little note about it. Major drama has never been continuously naturalistic in form and content throughout the whole length of the play. Here's what I wrote. 1 paragraph. I'm repeating this quotation because I've realized in writing this note and reading it over that this is the most important critical comment I have ever read. It gave me a sense of what was unsatisfactory about prose literature. It is a comment that I realize on looking back started me on my exploration of the poetic drama from the ancient Greeks to my own time, and when I began to write short stories and novels, led me to develop deepening techniques which would allow me to write poetic novels. In a very real sense, the perspective which Una Ellis Fermor's comment suggested on the reading and writing of literature gave me my whole career. Gave me 29 novels, 4 novellas, and more to come in the next few years. Okay, here's today's conclusion, a note that I just wrote as I was getting this video presentation ready. I started university at 19 years old. It was at that stage of my life that I fell in love with literature and began to devour the fascinating books on the topic in the library, many libraries. I became a teacher of high school English literature, and after I retired, I became a writer of novels. When I got the idea of writing a book about the elements and influences which had helped me to develop a form for the poetic novel, I was amazed to confirm what I'd vaguely realized, that the ideas that most stimulated my interest and had given me years of enjoyable and fascinating speculation as to the nature and practice of literature had not only all been read by me in my early 20s, 50 years ago, but were right there on my shelves in my house. I had bought them secondhand, inexpensively, but I'd bought them. Most of these books could have been placed in any order in this book, Influences on Me, as the ideas that I got from them intermingled in my thoughts. But the one book that stood out for me as the most influential book that I had read in my 20s when I started thinking about literature and books was this one, The Frontiers of Drama by Una Ellis Fermor. So I gave her book, the first chapter in my book. So here is my book. It's heavy. The Poetic Novel, Influences and Elements by John Passfield. So, as I said, that's on my website for free access. Can't buy it in a store, can't buy it on Amazon, but you can read it for free if you're interested in this topic. Not everybody is. It's the nuts and bolts of literature, I guess you'd say. It's the theory of literature and the practice, the techniques of literature. So have a look at johnpassfield.ca if you're interested. Thank you for watching this video.